The crystal champagne flute trembled slightly in my hand as I stood in the Anderson family's grand foyer, surrounded by what they called old money elegance, what I recognized as crushing debt dressed up in designer labels. Another charity case, Thomas. Eleanor Anderson's voice carried across the marble floor as she descended the sweeping staircase. First that unfortunate investment in solar energy, and now she gestured at me with her own champagne glass, her diamond bracelet catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. My husband, their precious son Thomas, squeezed my hand. Mother, this is Sofia. We've been dating for 6 months. I told you about her. Ah yes, Eleanor's lips curved into what might generously be called a smile. Though what was it again, dear? Investment analyst, I supplied quietly. At Morgan Stanley. How quaint. She turned to her husband, Richard, who was watching the scene unfold from his position by the antique bar. Darling, remember when we expected Thomas to marry Caroline Whitney? Now she came from the right sort of family. But he was still their son, still part of their world. And I was about to shatter that world completely. Sit down, I said gently. There's something you need to know about your family's financial situation. We're fine, he said automatically. Father always says. Your father is lying, I cut in. To you, to your mother, probably even to himself. The Anderson fortune isn't just dwindling, Thomas. It's gone. He sank into the armchair across from me. That's impossible. The houses, the cars, the lifestyle. All mortgaged to the hilt. Your father's been taking out new loans to pay off old ones, using inflated property valuations and his family name to secure credit. But it's a house of cards, and it's about to collapse. How do you know all this? I took a deep breath. Because my company, Phoenix Capital, has been acquiring your family's debt. The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas stared at me, his face a mix of confusion and dawning comprehension. Your company? He finally managed. But you work at Morgan Stanley. That's my cover, I explained. It lets me operate without drawing attention. Phoenix Capital is mine. I founded it 3 years ago with money I made from my first major deal. So when Mother was mocking you for managing other people's money, I was actually managing the debt that's keeping her in that mansion. I leaned forward. Thomas, I never meant to deceive you. When we met, I had no idea who your family was. By the time I realized I was already falling in love with you. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I come to associate with deep thought. The mansion's mortgage, you own it? As of Monday morning, yes, along with most of your family's other significant debt. The banks are selling it all at a steep discount because your father's missed several payments. Why? His voice was barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Initially, because it was a good business decision. Your father's pride makes him predictable. He'll do anything to maintain appearances. That makes the debt valuable to the right buyer. I moved to sit on the arm of his chair. But now I want to protect you. He looked up at me. Protect me? From what? From the fallout? Thomas, your father's financial house of cards is going to collapse. Maybe not this month or next, but soon. When it does, it's going to take down everyone connected to him. Unless what? Unless someone steps in. Someone who can restructure the debt, create a sustainable payment plan, maybe even help him rebuild legitimately. I touched his cheek gently. Someone who cares about his son enough to keep his family from complete ruin. Thomas caught my hand, holding it against his face. You'd do that? Even after how they treated you tonight? I'd do it for you, I said honestly, but they'll have to agree to my terms. No more living beyond their means, no more financial tricks, and most importantly, no more looking down on people they consider beneath them. He was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I told him. Finally, he looked up at me with a slight smile. You know what's ironic? Mother's always going on about marrying into the right family, maintaining our position in society. Meanwhile, you're probably worth more than our entire extended family combined. I laughed softly. Money isn't everything, Thomas. Your mother taught me that tonight, just not in a way she intended. What do you mean? She showed me that all the money in the world can't buy class, or kindness, or real value. You have those things naturally, that's why I fell in love with you. But your parents, they've spent so long pretending to be superior that they've forgotten how to be human. Just then, Thomas's phone buzzed. A text from his father. Son, need to discuss some pressing business matters tomorrow. Family only. Bring your checkbook. Thomas showed me the message, his face grim. He's going to ask me to invest in something, isn't he? Try to drag me into his financial mess. I nodded. Probably the new development project he's been floating to potential investors. The one that exists only on paper. What should I do? Go to the meeting, I said, standing up. Listen to what he has to say, but don't agree to anything. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll have bigger concerns than finding new investors. The bank calls. The bank calls, I confirmed. And suddenly, the Anderson family will have to face reality. Their fate lies in the hands of someone they considered too poor, too common, to be part of their world. Thomas pulled me into his arms. I love you, he whispered. Not your money or your power, just you. I know, I said, holding him tight. That's why you're nothing like them. And that's why I'm going to help your family, even though they don't deserve it. As we stood there in his darkened apartment, I thought about the meeting scheduled for Monday morning. The Andersons were about to learn a valuable lesson about true worth, and I would be the teacher they never knew they needed. Monday morning arrived with a series of increasingly panicked texts from Thomas. Dad's talking about a can't-miss investment opportunity, says he only needs $2 million to secure the deal. Mother's wearing her best pearls, the ones she only wears when she's trying to convince someone to give them money. They invited Caroline Whitney for lunch. Help. I smiled at my phone, then turned to the bank executives gathered in my office at Phoenix Capital. Our company occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building. No crystal chandeliers, just clean lines and spectacular views. Gentlemen, I addressed the room, are we ready to proceed with the Anderson portfolio acquisition? My CFO nodded. All the paperwork is in order. Once you sign, we'll own controlling interest in all their major debt instruments. Excellent. I signed the documents with a flourish. Please ensure the bank initiates contact by. I checked my watch. Let's say 1 p.m. Right around lunchtime. As the bankers filed out, my assistant appeared. Ms. Chen from the Times is still requesting an interview about Phoenix Capital's founder. The usual response, I told her. Phoenix Capital's leadership prefers to remain private. Our results speak for themselves. I had spent years building this company in secret, using my position at Morgan Stanley as cover while I assembled a team of the best financial minds in the business. We specialized in acquiring distressed debt, not to destroy companies, but to rebuild them. My philosophy was simple. Sometimes people in businesses need a reality check before they can grow. The Andersons were about to get the reality check of their lives. At exactly 1:07 p.m., Thomas called. Sofia. His voice was tight with stress. Something's happening. The bank just called Dad in the middle of lunch. He's locked himself in his study. I could hear Eleanor's voice in the background, growing increasingly shrill. Richard. What do you mean, all the loans? That's impossible. How's Caroline Whitney taking it? I couldn't resist asking. She left the moment Dad started sweating. Apparently, she had a pressing engagement. Thomas paused. Did you do this? The bank called because your father's loans have been acquired by new management, I said carefully. Management that's less interested in maintaining social appearances and more interested in actual financial responsibility. Phoenix Capital? Yes. Would you like me to come over? I think it's time your parents met the real me. He was quiet for a moment. Yes. But, give me 15 minutes first. There's something I need to say to them. I arrived at the Anderson mansion exactly 30 minutes later. This time, I wasn't wearing the modest dress I'd worn to dinner. Instead, I chose a perfectly tailored Channel suit, the kind of subtle power dressing that spoke of real wealth, not borrowed luxury. The front door was open. Inside, I found the family in the living room. Eleanor sat rigid on the antique sofa, her perfect posture at odds with her shell-shocked expression. Richard stood by the window, holding what appeared to be his third scotch of the afternoon. Thomas sat between them, looking somehow both uncomfortable and determined. What is she doing here? Eleanor demanded as I walked in. Thomas, this is a family matter. Yes, I agreed, taking a seat across from them. It is, and since I now own most of your family's debt, I'd say that makes me part of the matter. Richard's glass froze halfway to his lips. What did you say? Phoenix Capital, I said clearly, the company that just acquired your mortgages, car loans, and various other obligations, is my company. I founded it. I run it. And I'm here to discuss your future. Eleanor laughed, but it held a note of hysteria. This is absurd. You're just a simple analyst. Thomas said. I let people believe what they want to believe. I cut in smoothly. It makes it easier to see their true character. Like at dinner the other night when you were so quick to judge someone you thought was beneath you. Richard set his glass down hard enough to slosh scotch onto the antique side table. Now see here. No, I said firmly, you see here. Your family is effectively bankrupt. You've been playing financial musical chairs for years, using new loans to pay off old ones, leveraging your name and social connections to keep the banks at bay. But that game is over. I opened my briefcase and laid out a stack of documents. Here's your situation. The mansion has 2 mortgages totaling $12 million. The Hamptons house is underwater by $3 million. The cars, the clubs, the credit cards, you're paying more in monthly interest than most people earn in a year. Eleanor's hand flew to her pearls. Richard, is this true? Her husband seemed to deflate before our eyes. I thought I could turn it around. The new development project is a fantasy, I finished. I've seen the prospectus. It's all smoke and mirrors, just like everything else. Thomas leaned forward. Why didn't you tell me how bad it was, Dad? Because he's been lying to himself as much as to everyone else, I answered. But now you have a choice. I pulled out another document, thinner than the others, but far more important. This is a restructuring agreement. If you sign it, Phoenix Capital will consolidate all your debt with favorable terms. We'll work with you to develop a realistic budget and investment strategy. You'll get to keep the mansion, though the Hamptons house will have to be sold. And if we refuse, Richard's voice was barely a whisper, then we call in the loans. All of them. Immediately. The mansions, the cars, the lifestyle you've been clinging to, it all goes away. Your choice. Eleanor's face had gone from shock to calculating. Why would you help us? After how we treated you. Because of Thomas, I said simply. He's nothing like you. He cares about making a real difference in the world, not just maintaining appearances. And because he loves you, despite everything, I'm offering you a chance to change. There are conditions, I continued. Beyond the financial terms, no more looking down on people because of their background. No more manipulating your son into your schemes, and no more living beyond your means to impress people who are probably just as broke as you are. Richard picked up the restructuring agreement with trembling hands. We don't have much choice, do we? You always have a choice, I corrected him. Right now, you're choosing between reality and fantasy. I'm just making the choice clear. Thomas stood up and walked over to stand beside me. Sign it, Dad. Let's end the pretense. Maybe we can build something real for a change. Eleanor looked between us, something like respect finally showing in her eyes. All this time, she said slowly, we thought we were protecting our position in society. But you built something of real value while we were just playing pretend. Money isn't what makes someone valuable, I told her. Your son taught me that. Maybe it's time you learned it too. They signed the agreement. The next few months were challenging. The Andersons had to adjust to a very different lifestyle, one based on actual income rather than borrowed luxury. The Hamptons house was sold, along with most of their cars. Eleanor even took a part-time job at an art gallery, discovering she had a genuine talent for curation once she stopped focusing on the social aspect. Richard, under Phoenix Capital's guidance, started a legitimate investment advisory firm, using his connections to help other old money families face financial reality before it was too late. It was smaller than his previous ventures, but it was honest work. Thomas and I got married in a simple ceremony the following spring. Eleanor insisted on hosting the reception at the mansion, not to show off, but because, as she finally admitted, it was where her family belonged. During the reception, I found her in the kitchen, helping the catering staff arrange appetizers. I never thought I'd see Eleanor Anderson doing manual labor, I teased gently. She smiled, a real smile, not the social mask she used to wear. I never thought I'd see my son so happy with someone I once considered unsuitable. We all have a lot to learn, it seems. The lesson wasn't about money, I told her. It was about value, real value. Yes, she agreed, straightening her simple pearl necklace, the only one she'd kept. I think I'm finally beginning to understand that. Later that night, as Thomas and I danced under the stars in the mansion's garden, he whispered, "Thank you for saving my family." I didn't save them, I corrected him. I just showed them how to save themselves. Sometimes people need to lose everything they think is important to find what really matters. He pulled me closer, And what really matters? I looked up at the mansion, no longer a symbol of pretense and borrowed luxury, but a home where a family was learning to be real with each other. What matters is being true to yourself, I said. Everything else is just details on a balance sheet. The next week, I finally agreed to that interview with the Times. Not to brag about my success or my wealth, but to tell a different story about how sometimes the greatest investments we make aren't in stocks or bonds or real estate, but in people's potential to change. The Andersons weren't perfect, but they were trying. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Try to be better today than we were yesterday, and remember that true worth isn't measured in dollars, but in character. As for me, I kept running Phoenix Capital my way, quietly, effectively, and always with an eye toward transformation rather than destruction. Because sometimes the people who seem poorest in material wealth turn out to be the richest in what really matters.